They laughed at the poor janitor until he bought the company an hour later. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as Jake Martinez pushed his mop across the scuffed floors of Technova's corporate office. His back arched, his hands were rough from years of cleaning, and his uniform, a faded blue jumpsuit with a peeling name tag, smelled of bleach. Around him, executives in crisp suits strode past, not even glancing his way. To them, he was invisible. Just another part of the background. "Move it, old man," sneered Derek Hayes, a junior VP with a Rolex too big for his wrist. He shoved past Jake, nearly knocking the mop bucket over. A few nearby employees snickered. Jake didn't react. He just tightened his grip on the mop and kept working. He was used to this. Every day, the same disrespect. But today was different. Today, he had a secret. In his pocket, his phone buzzed. He pulled it out, a cracked, outdated model, and read the message. "Deal's done. Papers signed. You own 51% as of 3 p.m. A slow smile spread across his face. He checked the clock on the wall. 2:58 p.m. 2 minutes later, the elevator dinged. Out stepped Richard Cole, Technova's smirking CEO, flanked by lawyers. The office fell silent. "Everyone, gather up," Richard announced, clapping his hands. "Big news! We've been acquired." Murmurs of excitement spread. Derek grinned, already imagining his promotion. Richard cleared his throat. "The new owner is here to introduce himself." He turned, gesturing dramatically, toward the empty space beside him. Confused whispers filled the room. Then Jake stepped forward. The laughter started before he even spoke. "Wait, what?" Derek snorted. "This is a joke, right?" Jake ignored him. He unzipped his jumpsuit, revealing a tailored suit underneath. He pulled off his janitor's cap, running a hand through his now obviously expensive haircut. "No joke," Jake said, his voice calm but firm. "As of 3 minutes ago, I own this company." Silence. Then chaos. Derek's face went pale. Richard's smirk vanished. The lawyers handed Jake a folder, the signed acquisition papers. Jake flipped through them, then looked up at the stunned crowd. "First order of business? Derek Hayes, you're fired. Clean out your desk by 5. The room erupted. But Jake wasn't done. He turned to Richard. "And you? You've been embezzling company funds for years. The SEC has the evidence." Richard's knees buckled. Jake stepped back, letting the shock sink in. This was just the beginning. The office was in chaos. Employees whispered frantically, some staring at Jake like he'd grown a second head, others nervously glancing at Derek, who was now red-faced and sputtering. You can't do this," Derek shouted, slamming his fist on a desk. "Who the hell even are you?" Jake didn't raise his voice. "Jake Martinez. But you'd know that if you'd ever bothered to read my name tag." He turned to the rest of the staff. "For those wondering, yes, I've been cleaning these floors for the last 6 months. And no, it wasn't because I needed the job." A young intern, Mia, who had once brought Jake a coffee when no one else even said good morning, leaned forward. "Then, why?" Jake's expression darkened. "Because Technova fired my father. 30 years of loyal service, and Richard Cole tossed him out with no pension when he got sick." He locked eyes with Richard, who was now sweating under his designer suit. "I wanted to see what kind of company does that. Turns out, it's worse than I thought." The room was dead silent. Then, from the back, a slow clap started. Everyone turned. A tall, sharp-eyed woman in a sleek black suit stepped forward. Victoria Chase, Technova's most feared corporate lawyer. "Bravo, Mr. Martinez," she said, smirking. "But you do realize Richard still owns 49%? And the board answers to him." Jake smiled. Funny you mention that. He pulled out another document. Because as of 10 minutes ago, the board was dissolved. New bylaws. My shares give me full control. Victoria's smirk faded. Richard finally found his voice. This is illegal. I'll sue. You'll what? Jake cut him off. You really want to dig into your finances in court? Because I have everything. Richard's mouth snapped shut. Jake turned back to the employees. For the rest of you, nothing changes, except the disrespect. That ends now. His gaze landed on Derek again. Security will escort you out. As Derek was led away, still shouting protests, Mia raised a hesitant hand. So, what happens next? Jake's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then looked up with a strange glint in his eye. That's the interesting part. Jake slipped the phone back into his pocket and scanned the room. Every eye was locked onto him, some filled with awe, others with fear. The janitor they'd ignored for months now held their futures in his hands. He walked toward the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Technova was built on my father's ideas, he said, his voice low but carrying. Patents he signed away because he trusted Richard Cole. A bitter chuckle escaped him. Funny how life works. Now I own those patents. And this company. Victoria crossed her arms. Sentimental revenge won't make you money, Martinez. What's your real play here? Jake turned, his expression unreadable. Who said anything about revenge? He pulled a flash drive from his pocket and tossed it onto the conference table. That's every dirty secret, every offshore account, every lie this company's built on. But I'm not here to burn it down. He paused. I'm here to rebuild it. Mia frowned. But why pretend to be a janitor? Why not just buy the company outright? Because I needed to see the rot for myself, Jake said. The people who looked down on me? They're the same ones who've been bleeding this company dry. And the ones who treated me like a human? He nodded at Mia. You're the ones worth keeping. A murmur of relief spread through the room. Then the elevator dinged again. Everyone turned as two armed security guards stepped out, followed by a man in a crisp FBI jacket. Richard Cole went pale. Richard Cole, the agent said, you're under arrest for fraud, embezzlement, and securities violations. As the cuffs clicked around Richard's wrists, Jake didn't smile. He just watched, his face unreadable. Victoria stepped closer, her voice a razor-sharp whisper. You set this up. The FBI didn't move this fast on their own. Jake finally met her gaze. Number, they didn't. The room erupted into chaos again as Richard was led away, shouting threats. Jake ignored it, walking toward his office. But as he reached the door, Mia called out, Wait! What do we do now? Jake didn't stop. You work, like you always have. He glanced back, just once. But this time, you'll be paid what you're worth. The door closed behind him. The moment Jake stepped into the CEO's office, his office now, he exhaled hard, rolling his shoulders as if shedding an invisible weight. The room still smelled like Richard's overpriced cologne. He yanked open the curtains, flooding the space with sunlight, then tossed his janitor's cap onto the mahogany desk. It landed beside a framed photo of Richard, shaking hands with a senator. Jake flipped it, face down. A knock at the door. Come in. Mia stepped inside, clutching a tablet like a shield. I wasn't sure if you meant for me to... You're the only one who brought me coffee when I was just the janitor, Jake said, shrugging off his suit jacket. Pretty sure you've earned the right to walk in unannounced. A hesitant smile tugged at her lips. Okay, but what do I call you now? Mr. Martinez? CEO, sir? Jake. He sank into the leather chair. And before you ask, no, I'm not secretly some billionaire's son. My dad was the janitor. I just made money the old-fashioned way. Mia blinked. Which is getting lucky with crypto and revenge fantasies. He tapped a key on Richard's computer, pulling up financials. Speaking of, cancel all layoffs. Reinstate the cleaning staff's health care. And find me every employee Richard screwed over. Mia's fingers flew over the tablet. Got it. Also, Victoria's pacing outside like a shark. She says it's urgent. Jake smirked. Let her pace. The door burst open anyway. Victoria stormed in, heels clicking. You realize you've just made an enemy of every exec who profited under Richard, right? They'll bury you. Jake leaned back. Funny. I was about to say the same thing to them. He opened a desk drawer, pulling out a thick folder. Know what this is? Every NDA Richard used to silence harassment complaints. Every backroom deal. He tossed it to her. You're a shark, Victoria. So tell me, do you want to keep swimming in this toxic water, or help me drain it? She froze, the folder heavy in her hands. Mia's tablet pinged. Jake? The media's already calling. They're calling you the Janitor CEO. Jake grinned. I like it. Victoria exhaled sharply. You're insane. Yeah, Jake stood, rolling up his sleeves. But I'm the insane guy with all the leverage. So, you in? A beat. Then Victoria's lips curled. God help me. I'm in. Jake's first official email as CEO went out at 5:01 p.m. Subject: Tomorrow. Clocks in at 9 a.m. Dress code: whatever lets you do your best work. First order of business: we're burning the rulebook. By 5:30, the entire building was buzzing. The Janitor CEO story had already hit Bloomberg. Camera crews camped outside the lobby. Mia burst into Jake's office, eyes wide. The board members Richard handpicked are demanding an emergency meeting. Jake didn't look up from his laptop. Tell them meetings now require a $10,000 charitable donation to enter the room. Per person. Per hour. Victoria choked on her coffee. You can't be serious. Dead serious. Jake finally glanced up. That money's going to the janitorial staff pension fund. A notification popped up on Mia's phone. Her breath caught. Jake, the stock just jumped 15% in after-hours trading. Victoria's perfectly manicured nails dug into the armrest. How is that possible? The markets should be panicking. Jake smirked. Turns out, people like rooting for the guy who outsmarted the villain. The intercom buzzed. Security's voice crackled through. Sir, there's a Mr. Donovan Pierce here. Says he's your father's lawyer? Jake's entire body went rigid. Victoria frowned. I thought your father passed years ago? He did. Jake stood slowly, his voice dropping to a whisper. Which means whatever Donovan's here for, it's something my dad never got to tell me. The door opened. A frail man in his 70s entered, clutching a battered briefcase. His eyes locked onto Jake with eerie intensity. Jacob, he rasped. Your father didn't just get fired, he was murdered. The briefcase clicked open. Inside, a single blood-stained notebook. The air in the office turned to ice. Jake's fingers hovered over the notebook, like it might burn him. Explain. Now. His voice was steel. Donovan sank into a chair, bones creaking. 20 years ago, your father discovered something in these very offices, something buried in Technova's financials. He tapped the notebook. He wrote it all here. The night he tried to expose it, his accident happened. Mia's hand flew to her mouth. Victoria's sharp eyes narrowed. Jake flipped open the notebook. His father's handwriting, familiar and painful. Detailed dates, account numbers, names. One page was torn, stained dark brown. These are offshore transfers. Victoria murmured, peering over his shoulder. Massive ones. To Dot. Her breath hitched. To Blackthorn Holdings. Jake's head snapped up. The private military firm. Donovan nodded grimly. Technova wasn't just embezzling. They were funneling billions into Blackthorn's shadow projects. Your father found out they were testing illegal AI weapons on civilians. A stunned silence. Mia scrolled frantically through her tablet. Blackthorn's current CEO is Gregory Halstead, Jake finished, blood draining from his face. Richard Cole's college roommate. Victoria grabbed her phone. We need to... No. Jake slammed the notebook shut. No calls, no paper trail. His eyes burned with terrifying focus. Mia, pull every file on Project Longbow. Victoria, find out who is still working here from my father's era. Donovan gripped Jake's arm. They killed for this secret, Jacob. They'll do it again. Jake stared at the bloodstain. Let them try. Outside, thunder cracked. The first drops of rain hit the windows like warning shots. The storm outside mirrored the tempest in Jake's chest as he pored over his father's notes under the dim glow of a desk lamp. The office was empty now except for Mia, who was running searches on a secure terminal, and Victoria, who had turned the conference room into a war room. Jake's finger stopped on a page. This symbol, a hawk with 3 arrows. Seen it before? Mia leaned in. That's Blackthorn's old logo. They rebranded after the Geneva investigation. Victoria strode in, tossing a file on the desk. Found your father's old team. Of the 12 people who worked directly with him, 3 died in accidents, 4 left the country, and 2 are in psychiatric care. She paused. The last 3 still work here. Jake stood abruptly. Where? 17th floor, R&D. The elevator ride down was silent. When the doors opened, they were met with a security checkpoint, one that hadn't been there earlier. Badges, the guard grunted. Jake smiled coldly. I own the building. The guard paled but stood his ground. New policy. No one enters R&D without Mr. Halstead's personal approval. Victoria's eyebrow arched. Since when does Blackthorn's CEO set policies for Technova? Before the guard could respond, a voice crackled from his earpiece. His expression shifted. Mr. Halstead is on his way. Mia grabbed Jake's arm. We should go. Jake didn't move. Number, let him come. The lights flickered. A shadow filled the far hallway. Not Halstead. A figure in a black tactical suit, face obscured by a high-tech visor, stepped into view. The hawk and arrows insignia glowed faintly on their chest. The guard drew his weapon, only to collapse as the figure flicked their wrist. A neural disruptor hummed in the air. Victoria shoved Jake back toward the elevator. That's not Halstead. That's a Blackthorn Reaper. The figure raised their hand. The elevator controls shorted out in a shower of sparks. Jake's father's notebook suddenly felt heavy in his pocket. The Reaper spoke, their voice synthesized and hollow. Jacob Martinez, you have something that belongs to us. The Reaper moved like a liquid shadow. Before Jake could react, the neural disruptor hummed again. Victoria crumpled mid-stride, her body locking up in silent agony. Mia screamed. Jake grabbed her arm and yanked her behind a server rack, just as a pulse of energy shattered the glass wall behind them. Stay down! He fumbled for his phone. No signal. The Reaper had jammed everything. Mia's hands trembled as she pulled a fire alarm. Nothing. They've cut us off! The Reaper's boots clicked methodically across the floor. Compliance will be rewarded, Mr. Martinez. Jake's fingers closed around a fire extinguisher. He counted the footsteps. 3 more seconds. Whump! The extinguisher exploded in a cloud of white powder. The Reaper staggered, visor flashing erratically. Jake didn't hesitate. He lunged, driving his shoulder into their chest. The impact sent them both crashing through a cubicle wall. Up close, Jake caught a glimpse of human eyes behind the visor. Young, terrified. Then pain exploded through his ribs as the Reaper flipped them with unnatural strength, gloved hands closing around his throat. Bang! The Reaper jerked sideways. Mia stood braced against a desk, Victoria's smoking pistol in her shaking hands. The visor cracked. Blood seeped through. For one frozen second, the Reaper stared at Mia. Then collapsed. Jake scrambled to the body, ripping off the visor. Beneath the high-tech armor was a woman barely older than Mia, her pupils dilated with a cocktail of drugs and neural implants. Her lips moved weakly. They have your... A final shudder. Then nothing. Victoria groaned, struggling to her knees. Blackthorn's been using brainwashed operatives? Mia's voice was hollow. She looked scared. Jake pried open the dead Reaper's tactical vest. Taped inside, a photo of his father's grave, and a single word scrawled in blood. Run. Jake's hands shook as he stared at the blood-stained warning. The Reaper hadn't come to kill him. She'd come to warn him. Victoria grabbed the photo, her professional calm cracking. This isn't Blackthorn's M.O. They don't leave clues. They leave nothing. Mia pointed to the dead operative's wrist. A tattoo peeked from under her sleeve. Size 7. That's not standard Blackthorn branding. A metallic clink echoed from the vents. All three froze. Jake snatched the neural disruptor from the Reaper's belt just as the ceiling panel burst open. A canister rolled across the floor. Whoosh! Thick smoke filled the room. Shadows moved through the haze. Too many. Too fast. Victoria dragged Mia toward the emergency stairs. Jake, move! He didn't. Instead, Jake activated the stolen disruptor and slammed it against the server bank. The resulting EMP pulse fried every light in the building, plunging them into perfect darkness. In the blackout, whispers erupted. Asset secured? Negative. Package still active. Cleanup protocol initiated. Jake held his breath. These weren't Blackthorn operatives. The voices were younger, desperate. A hand grabbed his shoulder. He whirled, disruptor raised. Stop! Mia's urgent whisper. She pressed something cold into his palm, the dead Reaper's data chip. They're not here for us. They're erasing her. Gunfire erupted down the hall. The shadows retreated. Victoria emerged from the smoke, face grim. We have 90 seconds before backup generators kick in. Move. As they fled through the dark, Jake glanced back. The shadowy figures were recovering the Reaper's body with military precision. One looked up and flashed the same -7 tattoo. The safe house lights flickered as Jake jammed the data chip into a burner laptop. The screen exploded with files, each more horrifying than the last. Project Lazarus, subject, Mia R., designation size 7. Neural rewrite success rate, 87%. Mia stumbled back from the screen. That's impossible. I was just an intern. Victoria scanned the files, her face hardening. You were an intern, until Blackthorn grabbed you off campus 2 years ago. She pointed to a brain scan. They implanted you with next-gen neural tech. Then wipe your memory. Jake's throat tightened as he opened a video file. Security footage, Blackthorn Lab 7. The screen showed Mia, strapped to a chair, screaming as technicians adjusted a glowing headset. A familiar voice spoke off camera. Phase 3 requires perfect synchronization. If Subject 7 survives, we scale to civilian testing. Richard Cole stepped into frame. Mia's hands flew to her mouth. I don't remember any of this. Jake zoomed in on Richard's ID badge. Clearance level. Blackthorn oversight. Technova wasn't funneling money to Blackthorn. They were Blackthorn. A new file autoplayed. Project update. Neural hive objective. Remote crowd control via psi wave emission. The video showed test subjects moving in perfect unison, puppeteered by an unseen signal. Victoria recoiled. They're weaponizing her brainwaves? Mia suddenly gasped, clutching her temples. They're coming! Outside, car doors slammed. Jake yanked the chip free. Who? Mia's eyes welled with tears. The others like me. They feel me thinking about this. She touched her skull. There's a kill switch in my implant. If they get close enough... Glass shattered downstairs. Victoria already had her gun drawn. Jake, the notebook. Did your father find a way to stop this? Jake flipped through the blood-stained pages, then froze. His father's final entry. Only one failsafe works. The Janus Protocol. Need to reach the rest was illegible. Boots pounded up the stairs. Mia grabbed Jake's wrist, her grip terrifyingly strong. I can hold them off. The implant gives me their controls too. Her nose began bleeding. But you have to find Janus. Now. The door exploded inward. 3 Reapers stood framed in the doorway, their visors reflecting Mia's glowing eyes.